Today's sponsor of Things We Like is Martini Consumables. They supply camera, lighting, sound, consumables, and equipment for the film and television industry. That's what I like. Hi, Eamonn.
Do you know what? That music's giving you the sort of rhythm. You know, the rhythm you would need in the boxing ring. You know,
yeah.
That's what I like.
Are we doing boxing today? I got a feeling that Things You Like boxing today.
Well, I do. I feel it's the word aggressive, pugilistic. Pugilistic is
You
the
know
word.
what? I always thought you were slightly pugilistic.
Yes.
I think that was Chris Eubank with the pugilism. What's it? The pugilism. I love a bit of pugilism. You know what? I used to love. It always used. I think it was Sports Night, wasn't it? More than anything else. Harry Carpenter. And he used to. Where did they used to be often from Wembley Arena? There was George Hall.
The shoe jumping from Wembley Arena.
Yeah, well, they used to have everything. Wembley.
I never knew what a puissance was until we turned on Sports Night on a Wednesday night, and there was Irish riders. I forget who he was, but there was a guy who was very good. Who was an Irish rider, and he used to jump this big wall. Was that puissance?
No, that's the high jump one. I think with Nick Skelton was the one that broke the world record, who's ended up winning gold medals at the Olympics in his 50s, who named his autobiography after, I think he called it Only Fools and Horses, because he was such a huge Only Fools and Horses fan. But he never boxed, I don't think, Nick Skelton.
See, my friend, the likes of you and me, working class boys, we weren't expected to watch shoe jumping or 3-day eventing or whatever.
No.
And through the magnificence and the spread of sport that there was on television for us, I would have finished my homework, it'd be a Wednesday night or whatever, and I would watch that. And my friend, 2 or 3 years ago, I went to a, what's it called when horses jump, eventing or whatever.
A gymkhana.
Is that what
they call it?
No. I went to watch. It was really good, really professional. And you know what Princess Anne does and her daughter and all that sort of thing. I think it's
Hold on.
What?
Look, see this.
Yes.
See this bowler hat.
Yeah.
This
Stan Laurel.
No.
Oliver Hardy.
No, my friend. This was given to me at the badminton horse trials. Wow. And I know nothing about horses. And I was given the bowler hat. Look at that.
Stan Laurel. It is. So
the idea, that's your horsey bowler hat. That's what that is.
Brilliant.
So there it is. And it's been sitting there. I'd love to wear it. Huh?
What else have you got up there?
I've got loads of bit. Look, I've got the shoot annual there. Old Subutio from the day.
Well, who have you got? Who have you got?
Well, this one here. Let me see if I can find this. This is. See, I kept all this stuff from when I was a kid.
That is old.
This is the England kit. When Admiral, now we're going to do an episode about this in the future, about Admiral football kits.
Yeah.
And when this came out in 1974 or 75,
England.
There we are. Is that Jerry Francis or is
That's class, mate. That really is.
You can't quite see it. So there we are. Look, there he is. And I've managed to get it. But the problem is that every goalkeeper broke because you'd end up having to use blue tack on the end of it because you'd always play around with it too much. But there they are. Most of them are still there.
See, I always played it on the floor. I loved Subudio, but I played it on the floor. We didn't have a table to play it on. Yeah. So in our side hall, which is basically, I suppose, what you'd call the utility room, we had it on the floor. And then people would just walk in and out of the side door and they'd walk all over your pitch. As you say, crack, 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 crack. That was the end of it.
And you know what? It would never stick to the floor. You'd end up like with lumpy bits.
And bumps.
Try and get the ball over the top. Yeah. It's not like the pitches of today, Eamonn. Not like the pitches of today.
No, I'd like to play you a game. That'd be good. I'd like that.
But were you a pusher or a flicker? I bet you were a pusher, weren't you?
No, I was a flicker.
You're a proper flicker?
Yeah. I was really good at it. I really was.
Because there's people that are really good and they have that long fingernail, like a classical guitarist. Mm-hmm. So then they would do the flick and then you would get the bend and everything. I could never do any of that.
Oh, no, I could do that. And it's like, I suppose I think back to the way football used to be in the 70s, whatever, and the pitches were just mud baths.
Yeah.
Complete mud baths. I just don't think people believe what you're saying when you come up with this, but you should look, and you should go on Instagram and look up football pitches of the 70s, and these guys today just don't know they're living.
There was a game, I think it was at the baseball ground, Derby County.
That was a bad pitch.
I mean, it was talk about Horse of the Year show.
Yeah,
I mean, the horses would probably go trotting on there or galloping and just go, well, we can't run on this. No. I mean, what are you giving me here? And that's how bad it was.
Now, look, listen, we're going to talk about boxing. And
yes.
One of the things was, I remember in the early 80s, I saw Rocky 2 before I saw Rocky 1. And
that was the second fight with Apollo Creed.
Correct. And Apollo Creed was winning. I remember being in the cinema.
Yeah.
And Apollo Creed was winning. And then it turned around. Rocky was back on his feet, and the music meant so much. And everybody was standing up and screaming. And I mean it, mate. I turned around and I was in the circle in the Curzon Cinema on the Ormer Road in Belfast, and everyone was standing up. And they were saying, go on, go on, go on. And they were shouting on this. And Rocky, Sylvester Stallone, he wins it. He wins it. And honestly, my friend, people stood applauding.
I don't blame. I'm not surprised. They were brilliant. They were brilliant.
I mean, that is immersive. Watching a film, you don't want any more than that. I mean, you're not getting any better, any closer to the action than that. That's what you want to create.
Rocky won. Rocky won the Oscar for the best film.
I know. Then
in '76.
I can watch Rocky 1, which was much slower than Rocky 2.
Absolutely right.
More action and whatever.
Yeah.
But and those were the days we would get VHSs. You would go to Extravision or Superstore, the video shops. When you would get all that you had to get on a Saturday night. Did you not do that?
Yeah. Well, funny enough, Rocky. I can honestly tell you that this is absolutely the truth. That Rocky was the first video I ever rented from. This was probably when we got a video machine quite early. It was like one of those Ferguson Video Stars, with the big clunky stuff. 81, about 81.
Betamax.
And it was it wasn't Betamax. It was VHS, but it was big clunky thing. And and that was the first video we rented. Across the road, there was a shop across the road that did them. Was the original Rocky. So I did actually watch them.
At the same time, I was an apprentice sports reporter. I was learning to be a boxing reporter by the ring.
Wow.
And a guy who we're going to talk to today, who I'm absolutely thrilled about. Same age as me, same career path as me. So I became a boxing reporter, and he became professional, from an amateur boxer to a professional boxer. And his name was...
Oh, do you want me to intro him now? Do you want me to bring him in?
Bring him in.
Listen, I hope this is right. And I'm guessing, you tell me whether I'm right here. One of the greatest fighters that there's ever been from this country, right?
Commonwealth Games champion.
Professional boxer, became a professional boxer in 81, the same year that I rented Rocky. So can you see the links already?
And became a world champion.
1985, featherweight champion. Eusebio Pedrosa was the man that he beat. And that was in the old days of 15 rounds. That was when he had to be really tough. Yeah. That year, Sports Personality of the Year, and I would say the second most famous Irishman on this podcast. Great, Barry McGuigan. How are you, Barry?
How are you? How you doing, Eamonn?
I'm doing well, my friend. Oh, I feel better when I see you.
Good. Thank you for that.
Listen, I got to ask you, because the two of you.
Yeah.
So who remembers who met who first, and how was that?
I remember I turned pro in 1981.
Yeah.
And Eamonn was a big star on UTV way back, Ulster Television back then. And he was coming through, and he was a handsome dude with black hair and like slim as a bloody whippet. And I tell you, he was the man. And honestly, he was the star of UTV, and
But Paul, this was a big thing. We did a pre-record in the afternoon. You wouldn't normally do a pre-record, and we're in an open area in the studio, and me, Barry's manager, Barry, there, and the big announcement was he was turning professional, and that must have been an amazing thing, Barry, to actually take that upon your shoulders and say, this is going to be my job, this is going to be my life.
That's right. And I just had several years as a top flight. I won the Commonwealth Games at 17, just turned 17 in Edmonton, Canada for Northern Ireland. I'd won the Irish seniors, the Ulster seniors, the
Won
Irish
everything.
juvenile, won everything. And then I was a very young, I won the Ulster seniors, knocked out a guy called Shawnee Russell and Hughie Russell's brother, and then I went out to the Commonwealth Games, and I was only a baby. They didn't expect me to win, and I won the gold medal, and that really was the beginning of my international success. I won a number of European medals and international multi-nation tournaments, and then I went to and captained the Irish Olympic team in Moscow in 1980. And then I had a load of offers from different people, but I liked the offer and the fact that I could fight at home with with the BJ Eastwood, who was a top bookie at the time, and he was a big splash in Northern Ireland. And I just thought we hadn't had boxing in Ireland since the Freddie Gilroy, John Caldwell days, so there was hunger for it, and I had a huge fan base. And
but here's the thing: how come at your age? How old were you then?
I was 19.
19.
18, 19, that's right.
Right. So what would get me is, of all the careers you could choose, would you not, you see, Paul, if this was me, I would be thinking, I'm not bad looking. I want to keep it like this. And it hurts. It hurts. If someone was to hit me, it would hurt. Did you not worry about things hurting, Barry?
No. Because I'd chosen boxing and I was pretty good at football. I was a pretty decent middle distance runner. I was too small for Gaelic. I used to get elbowed in the head, and then I'd end up having a row.
Which you always happened to win, right, Barry? And then thought, there's nothing in this.
You couldn't throw a left hook in on the Gaelic pitch, or you'd be sent off. Anyway, so I knew I could be pretty good at the boxing, and I always felt, I'm sure I said it at the time, I always felt like 3 rounds wasn't enough for me, and I had strength, and I had incredible stamina and determination, and I knew that guys that were really quick and fast and were slick and had good boxing styles had the chance over 3 rounds of outboxing me. But I knew that, given the fact that we could fight 15 rounds. Now, at that stage, I was still only a pup, and I was still only
15, amazing.
15 rounds. So I knew that it would suit me. I knew I could adapt to that extra rounds, and that it would, I'd be able to apply pressure and just.
But let me ask you, mate, what as your career and your life has gone on and on, what is harder, boxing in the ring or being part of the weakest link?
Because Eamonn was knocked out in round, what was it? It was a TKO round 2.
Barry, you and me came up across the same things. At our age, and we're similar ages, memory. I knew the answers to everything, absolutely everything. But then they put the question to you and you go, and you just can't recall it.
Yeah, I have issues with that as well. More so now, and as I get older, and we're same age. I think you're about 5 months or so older than me, so we're all around the same age. So, and I'm sure you haven't got there yet, Paul, but I'm sure you're just checking your memory too.
I'm on the way, Barry. I'm on the way.
It's the recall. It's and even I'm obsessive about boxing, and of course, I'm still involved in boxing now with my kids. And Shane is 35 years old, 36, apologies. And he's trained 10 world champions already. And so he's headed for the Hall of Fame, that's for sure. And he's really good at what he does. And so I'm in the gym a couple of days a week and watching the kids coming through.
But Barry, when you look at all the years, I mean, we're going back, talking about the height of your career, 40 odd years ago.
45.
Yeah. And then along comes this, I'm a celebrity, get me out of here, the jungle. But you laugh at that, but I thought it was fantastic that no matter where you are in your life, if people remember you or don't, they all remembered you after this. They wanted to know you. Did it in a way reinvent you, relaunch you?
I don't know, Eamon. I mean, I won Hell's Kitchen in 2007. There's all sorts of shenanigans going on in there, and I mean, Jim Davidson losing his cool and getting a couple of drinks and wanting to beat up the young fella. What was his name from Ireland? I've got it. I've written it down here. He wanted to flatten. What was his name? Where is I written it? Yes, it was Brian Dowling. Do you remember?
Oh,
Brian?
yes, Brian from Big Brother. Yeah,
yeah, and Brian was really upset, and I was going, Jim, sit down, behave yourself, and he was going, Barry, and I was going, stop it, man, leave him alone, and I had to end up being a referee in there, and it was like, anyway, but it never happened, and it all sort of mellowed down, and we get on all right, and then it was all, and anyway, I won the thing, and I still can't cook.
You were there. You got.
It wasn't Gordon. It's because you were the only one that Gordon Ramsay was frightened of, Barry. That's the.
It wasn't Gordon Ramsay. It was the man himself, Marco Pierre.
Oh, Marco Pierre White. Yeah. He was. Look,
and him and I got on really well. We really got on well. But yeah, now I've forgotten what the question was.
But you get respect. I mean, being a fighter, there's a certain amount of respect that people give you, not because they're frightened of you, or whatever. But I think people. You see, Paul, I think everybody's frightened of pain. And, the idea of doing what he does and being in the ring and, feeling a fist come down on your face or into your stomach or into your ribs or whatever it is. Yeah. I mean, how good are you at absorbing pain, Barry?
Obviously pretty good, or I wouldn't be here. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a very, very tough business and sometimes tragic. And, we saw only a couple of weeks ago a young kid called John Cooney who lost his life boxing over in Belfast. It was, it's very, very sad, and it happens every now and again. And how can we forget Gerald McClelland, Michael Watson, Paul Engel? It's happened over the years. It's a very dangerous business and that's the irony. It's probably the most exciting sport in the world to watch, and people get so into it and get really excited about it. But it also is dangerous, and all the way through my life, I was involved in a tragic fight in 1983. Young Ali. And it was in the Grosvenor House Hotel, and every single time I drive past it or go into it, I think about that young man and think about how tough it was. But this
was the young lad who died.
Who died after my fight, 5 months after me. A young Nigerian kid who died 5 months after my fight.
Did you think about giving up the sport?
Yeah,
giving up fighting?
I didn't want to box anymore. I had enough. I mean, I was sick to my stomach of it, and it just to think that could happen. And you never, as a fighter, you never think of things like that. And because you can't think of things like that, you can't think that there is a possibility that you could end up, seriously injured or dead. You can't think of it, but that, what I'm saying is that is the reality. And so, there's nothing heroic about being tough. It's a business. I've got to be able to take the game is I've got to be able to take your punches, and you either are able to take mine or not, or I'm not able to take yours. And the winner, certainly in my day, over 15 rounds, is determined in that hour and however long it adds up to. And that's what I chose to do. That's what I wanted to invest my time in. I was pretty good at it, and I got to the top, and I've got out, thank God, without too much damage.
Well, let me give you an insight. So when I am a reporter, I'm assigned by Ulster Television to cover his fights, and I'm sitting ringside, and the doctor there was Dr. Paul McKeown. Do you ever remember Dr. Paul McKeown? He was my family GP.
There you go.
He was the doctor there at the ring. And so I'm taking notes down in shorthand, and I'm writing what's happening and whatever it is. And then I start wiping my head. I wipe my head a couple of times. And then I look down in my notebook, and it's splattered with blood. So initially it's slobbers and sweat and whatever that's coming your way as these guys are punching hell out of each other. And then somebody gets a cut mouth or whatever on it. So it brings it home. There's a reality to all of that, Barry. I mean, a brutality of seeing blood that's just different. You don't see that in other walks of life.
You know, the thing is, Eamon, we go back to the gladiators, like the real gladiators all those years ago, where the guys that could really fight, and that meant in those times sure death. They were the ones that were you know, it's like, hail, you are the king, you know, and that's the way it was.
But did you see it like that, Barry? When you were, I mean, you're a kid, you know, you're young, and then you get to, like you say, 22, by 85, you know, you win the world title. I imagine that never occurs to you till much later, though, right? You're just going out and you're thinking, I'm winning this one. Okay, now on to the next one, Well, the thing about it is, Paul, it was almost impossible not to think about it because of what happened with young Ali in 1983. Sure.
It's impossible to get that sort of stuff out of your mind. So in all of your quiet time when you're building and getting ready, and you would do your weigh in and you do all the chest beating interviews and all that sort of stuff, it's much worse than it was in my day. You know, nowadays it's just, I look at some of these guys and I say, you know, wise up. Cut out that old crap, and, you know, I'm going to take your head off. And you're right in the face and saying, just shut up and turn up and be able to fight. And you better be able to fight.
One of these people that would do the setup stuff, the pantomime stuff that's there to sell tickets.
We didn't have to do that. I mean, honest to God, you know, when you think about it, and I'm not trying to say I'm any better than anybody else. That was not in my nature to say to somebody, look, I'm going to decapitate you. I'm going to try to decapitate you with every punch I throw. And if I don't, I'm going to really badly hurt you. You know, you don't need to say those sort of things. You don't need to say it. And, you know, trash talking is just, I just don't like it. And I've never liked it, never enjoyed it. And it's totally unnecessary. If you can really fight, it's unnecessary. If you can't, or if you're not the real McCoy, then maybe you need it. But I just don't think if you can turn out and put it together and put on a performance, and there's no need for it.
The most formidable opponent I would say you ever faced was be your wife, Sandra. I mean, you wouldn't disagree with me, would you? She's the boss.
I'm telling you, you've got that in one.
Barry, 85 though, I want to know, so many sports people that I've spoken to that have reached the top. I mean, you did something that me and Amy could never dream of. You know, the world champion. Everybody knew you. Everybody watched the fight. But what was the feeling like afterwards? Is it because the word I always hear from anybody that's won a gold medal or an FA Cup final or whatever is relief more than jubilation? What did you feel?
It was amazing because, you know, it was fairly tough times over in Northern Ireland. There was a lot of the politics and all of the, call it whatever, the troubles, as we sort of euphemistically referred to them. You know, it was a difficult time. And I was very unique in the sense that I had people from both sides of the community coming to support me. I did my level best not to alienate anybody. And I knew that I was appealing to both the Protestants and the Catholics. And that was, for me, that was the most important thing, because I was living in Northern Ireland and training, and those were my people. So I wanted to do the best thing I could and give them, you know, several days during the year where they could have enjoyment and travel off together and travel to my fights and have a drink together and watch the fight and then come back home again. And it was a form of, you know, enjoyment, a real form of enjoyment for me. It
was a form of escape, mate. So it was. And I mean, Paul, I've been lucky enough to watch this man come through Belfast, 100,000 people lining the streets, cheering him as a world champion. And he did unite. Nobody thought about, are you a Catholic, are you a Protestant or whatever. He was Barry McGuigan. He represented all of us. And
so what was the feeling then, Barry? What did you feel?
It was a phenomenal feeling. And where I wore I'll get off that now. I don't want to sort of beat my own chest, but I wore the blue shorts of peace, the white and blue a flag of peace, and I put a white dove on my shorts because it was really important to me. But coming home after winning the world title, and I remember we went down to where the Belfast Telegraph office was, Eamon, at the bottom of Royal Avenue, and we got on the back of a lorry.
That's right.
And we drove through, as Eamon says, 100,000 people. It was just like the
City Hall,
right up to the City Hall.
Yeah.
And we came out on the balcony on the first floor of the City Hall. And it was like unbelievable. You know, the greatest day of my life, no doubt about it. And then 2 days later, I went down to Dublin.
Did it all again.
And there were 250,000 people there. Wow. And we went from the top of O'Connell Street right up through O'Connell Street up to the Mansion House. And it was, honest to God, it was unbelievable. And my dad kept saying, Jesus Christ. and you know, look at that. And what that meant to me is that's what it meant to the Irish people. My success, and that's what it meant to me. And I knew that those were special days. And I know, you know, no other day in the world, no other 2 days, because they were two amazing days. No day in the rest of my life ever came close to that.
Your dad was a special man. I know he's very special to you. And Paul, Barry used to come out into the ring.
I know. I watched it when I used to watch the fights. I know what you're going to say.
Irish Danny boy.
Yeah.
And he used to stand out. It would be emotional. It's a song.
Amazing.
And I'm sure Barry's exactly the same. It brings tears.
Yeah.
Brings tears to my eyes. Because of my own dad, for reasons I'm not going to, but you know, it's, how emotional was that for you, Barry?
I can't. My old man, my dad was very important to me. He saw me winning the world title, and he died, unfortunately, at 52. So he was only a young man, but he was great. He was a really big part of my life. Everything about my life was, you know, generated by my own man. He brought me everywhere. We went to spar all over the country. We went to Dublin. We went to Belfast, because all the best amateur clubs were in Belfast or Dublin. So it meant him traveling. And bear in mind, he was out probably 4 nights a week with the band, and he still found the time to get me that extra quality sparring, which brought me on in leaps and bounds. He was an amazing guy. And as I say, you know, we were all destroyed when he died. And he was only a young man. He was only 52 years old. So if I get into talking about all of the tragedies that I've had, and honest to God, I've had some amazing nights. We've just talked about them, but God knows we've had some tragedies too. My brother Dermot,
and we know that. But do you know what, mate? We're here because Paul. We talked about doing this podcast over. Paul, what was the premise? What was the thing that we want to hear?
You know what it was?
Like
it was to talk about things we like, the show's called Things We Like, and people we like. So Barry, that's why we want you on, because we really like you, and so you're always going to be someone that's going to be a guest on the show. And it's things we like. Well, a lot of it we go back to when we were kids, because that's when, you know, a lot of people look back and think that that's a happy time. Mm-hmm. And so we talk about the things we like. So what about you? What do you like? You know, whether this is going back years or whether it's stuff that you do now. See, but that's the whole thing. What do you like?
We talk about toys, we talk about sweets, we talk about TV programs. But it's amazing when you think about it, just something that gives you a smile or a good memory.
There's so many things that people are moaning about. I don't like this and I don't like that. So it's just like, what do you like? And so that's what we want to do.
I don't drink and I don't smoke and I'm a boring so-and-so. No, I love my food. And
okay.
yeah. And when I was coming through and watching everything, because boxing everything's about weight, and you have to make sure you don't get too heavy, because you got to hit a weight at a certain date, and you got to hold that weight throughout the competition as an amateur. And as a pro, it's less taxing because you only got to do it once. But it's, so I love my sweet foods. I love my food in general. But I love my sweet food.
What do you love? What do you love the best, Barry?
I am a new member. Mikado biscuits.
Oh my God!
Mikado biscuits.
Fluffy and
I've never seen eyes light up quite so quickly there.
The coconut and the jam, and
yes.
Oh my God! I could eat like 3 packets of them, and then I'd fig rolls with a big load of butter between two and sandwich them on top, and then drink my tea with it. So that was my sort of predilection. I loved the Mikado biscuits. I loved the fig rolls, and I just love food in general. But so
Mikado they're an Irish biscuit. You'd only get them in Ireland.
You only get them in Ireland. I think Marks and Sparks might get them as well, because Sandra gets them every now and again. But I've always loved sweet food. Are you sweet? Are you savory? But I mean, I love savory food, but I always have to finish with something sweet. Always have to, and it's never been any different. So that was the hardest thing about the bloody jungle. I was starving.
Yeah.
I was so hungry, and you weren't allowed any salt or peppers or any condiments, and it was like, oh my God! So I dropped 16 pounds in 21 days.
I better go into that. I should join up for that.
How many biscuits did you get rid of as soon as you got out there?
When I came out, I went through a number of packets of biscuits.
Yeah, and a great achievement. I mean, when you look coming through the jungle, funny, I noticed the final game is called Cyclone, isn't it?
Yeah, it was, because they all I didn't reach that far because I was out 4th or 5th, and they had this, hosing with the pipe, and you're supposed to run up and try and get. The objective is to get to the end on the other side, and they hit you with hose pipes and all that. I would love that, but fortunately I never reached that far. But it was a great experience. And, I think we all agreed, and I was interested. I was reading with number of months ago about, the various different I'm a celebrities, and there was so much angst and people falling out with each other. But I have to tell you, every single one of the people that were there were just lovely. I mean, Reverend Richard Coles and Maura didn't come in until we were several days into it. But all the rest of them, and we all sort of agreed, like, it's 2 ways of doing this. You can either get cantankerous with each other and get annoyed with each other and have a bickering fights and that sort of stuff. And I went, look, we're here to enjoy ourselves. Just let's have a bit of fun. Let's have an enjoyable time. And everybody else agreed with it. And they were, from Danny Jones, Alan Halsall, Dean McCullough, Maura, GK, who is hilarious, Richard Coles, who's also hilarious, and the Reverend Richard Coles. And Colleen was lovely. She made my bed every morning. And Jane Moore, and she was really good to Oti and to Lisa and young Melvin. They were all a brilliant bunch of people, and I get on with people. I mean, you know that I find it hard to fall out with people, because I always think
all the time.
I'm in the middle.
Sorry, I missed that. Say again, Paul.
I said I'm in the middle. Says you, but not falling out with anybody. Eamonn falling out with anybody that is moving. I got one more for you, Barry. What about things that you like? And it's something that's very close to my heart, and I hope is yours as well.
Yeah,
Tottenham Hotspur Football Club.
Yes, I'm losing faith, Paul. I don't know.
Don't lose faith, Barry. Whatever you do.
No. I've been a Tottenham supporter ever since I grew up. There was a guy called Leo Strong, who lived down the road from me, and we had a town league, and so we were McCurtain Street Hotspurs.
Oh well,
he was a Tottenham fan, and I lived on the Diamond, but it was right. You just turn out of my shop and you turn right, and you went down McCurtain Street, and that was my street, and he lived at the bottom, so we all played in the town league, and we were McCurtain Street Hotspurs.
I love that. I thought it'd be Big Pat. I thought it'd be Pat. Usually it's Pat Jennings is usually the reason. So either Pat Jennings or George Best, like Eamonn, being a United fan.
Big Pat was like a huge, he's physically huge, and he had a pair of hands, because they used to joke at me, look at, I have big hands, but he had bigger hands than anybody. My father said he's got a bunch of bananas, you know.
Yeah. He used to go out to get a handful of coal for the fire, didn't he?
He did, though. He did.
Yeah. Well, what a fabulous man. What a great human being.
He should be knighted. He should be. Paul and I both agree.
One of the nicest guys I've ever met.
How old is he, Paul?
He's 80 in April.
Isn't that incredible?
Wow.
He's 80 in April.
Years old.
He's 80.
Wow, he's such a great man. And his wife, Patricia, is that
Eleanor.
Melon. What's it again? Eleanor.
Yeah.
She's a lovely. She used to be a singer. She's a singer around the same time as my dad in the various different show bands and all that. So
okay, now so let me ask you the singing thing and the influence of your dad. Yeah. And I know because I've been on TV programs where you've tried it and done it and whatever. Was it ever a serious ambition for you to, after boxing or during boxing or whatever, to be a singer?
If I hadn't been a professional athlete, I would have been a singer. I would have been, because I grew up in the show band era, and so did you, Eamonn. And of course, you had some of the most amazing show bands who just sounded exactly like records that were that good.
Could you just explain? I think this is, both of you could do this, because show bands over in England, not people knew what show. I know they're huge over in Ireland.
Huge.
So show bands, what were show bands?
Show bands were Dickie Rock. You had so many great club sound. You had the Miami show band who had that tragedy all those years ago. I think that in many ways was this put a stop to so much of the Irish bands going
the show band that were murdered.
Yes, I know that. Yeah,
murdered in Banbridge along the road that connects Belfast to Dublin. And I mean, it's sort of starting at the end and sort of working my way back. But all of my dad travelled probably 3 nights of a 5-night week. 3 of the nights would have been in Northern Ireland. So the show bands, a bit like sport, were the way that people could let off steam, could go and enjoy themselves, and nobody owned music, nobody owned sport.
They played the hits of the day, didn't they? They were playing all the.
So they played all the hits of the day, and these guys were so good, Paul, so talented. My dad used to play with a group. I put it up on Twitter the other day. Whereas Cecil Kettles had a band, and Cecil Kettles was from Enniskillen, just over the border from us, and he had a show band called the Skyrockets. And my dad Dad joined probably 10 or 15 bands during the 70s and 80s and the late 60s. And after Dad had come back from the Eurovision Song Contest in 1968, where he'd won the Irish Song Contest, and he'd entered in. He was then the representative for Ireland in the Eurovision Song Contest. And would you hear this? It takes place in the Royal Albert Hall,
right?
And I'm going there on Friday night because our girl Caroline Dubois is defending her world lightweight title. So it's a very special place for me. Amazing. My dad ended up getting 4th. He won the Irish Song Contest, got 4th in the Eurovision, and of course to a show band. That was absolutely enormous. So he was then signed up, I think maybe even before then, with the Skyrockets, and so they were all glammed out in their suits and all that. So you got to check my Twitter out, at Clonus Cyclone, and you'll see it. It's an amazing photograph of my dad back in 1968 when he won the Irish Song Contest and represented Ireland in the Eurovision Song Contest, and the band were a northern band, right? So they were from mostly County Tyrone, County Derry, and of course Cecil was from Fermanagh. But some of these bands, I'm not joking, they were so good, and you would swear that they were playing a record. That's how good they were.
Characteristic wave of the chart.
Sorry, I'm just trying to look up Clonus show band here.
Well, it was the year of Cliff Richard singing Congratulations, and he always moaned about the fact that he was robbed. So maybe, and he was always robbed, so maybe it was your dad that was the one that was robbed and not Cliff after all.
No, well, it's interesting. I said it on
because nobody's won the Eurovision. Nobody's won the Eurovision more times than Ireland. I mean, this was all happening. So Cliff can moan away all he wants, but that's the fact.
The interesting thing is, I said it on Twitter the other day. Dad came fourth, and it was won by Cliff. And then this girl came back and said, no, it wasn't.
Yeah.
And then I immediately thought, I made a real faux pas there, because the girl that won it was from Spain.
Yeah.
And the song was called La La La.
Crap, as Cliff still calls it to this day.
That's him. There he is. That's the old man. And that's Dad on the left. The next one to his left shoulder is Cecil Kettles. And I can't remember the rest of the players. There were and Ivan McBride was a trombone player. And they had great brass, and they used to rehearse down at the back of our shop in a room at the back. And honest to God Almighty, it just sounded so sounded so good. They were really special. Now, this question is, what would you have done if you hadn't a box? I would definitely have been in the music business.
Okay, but you say that, but twice you've mentioned our shop, and people are going, "What was his shop? Were you not expected to be in the shop?"
My mother had a grocery business, and my dad bought it back in the mid to late 60s, and it's on. They bought a big 3-story old Edwardian house.